So welcome to the Lovefly podcast. It's Paul Tiz, our fearofflying coach, Lovefly co-founder, and today, oh my God, I can't believe who we've got as a guest. We've got Ian from FlightRadar24. I'm just so chuffed that you're here. The Love Flyers love you, so welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Tell us about how you started. And I know it's massive now. I was like doing some research before we spoke. I can't believe how many countries you're in and all the rest of it. But how did it all start?
Yeah, FlightRadar24 got started completely by accident, which is always a fun story to tell. Our co-founders were a Swedish-based company, and our two co-founders were working on a price comparison site. So think Expedia, Kayak, what have you, for the Swedish market. And they were thinking of ways to drive traffic. This was 2006, 2007. They were thinking of ways to drive traffic to that site. So ADSB had recently kind of started to gain some adoption, and you could build a receiver and put one up wherever you were. And so they put a few up in the Stockholm area, and then put a moving map of air traffic in the Stockholm area on the site. And then that grew a little bit, and there were more planes on the site or more planes on the map on this price comparison site. And eventually it got to the point where Google thought that the website was a flight tracking site, not a price comparison site. And so then they realized, well, if this is what so many people are coming for, maybe we should do this full time. And the site was the moving map was spun off and became what is now FlightRadar24. So that was so
it's a completely sort of an emergent thing. Then it grew popularity, and that was it.
Yeah, people like seeing what's happening around them, in the world, and so then the ability to follow flights in real time, not just to know that the flight had departed or kind of when it was going to arrive based on some airline schedule, but knowing exactly where it was and where it was going and where it was coming from, and all of those things that I think people have really come to love about FlightRadar24. That's kind of where it got started, with just a tiny half screen map.
It's just amazing. I mean, I just see it on so many people's phones, and I was quite surprised, because I thought our aviation sort of geeks might love it, just sort of go, where am I going? But then I saw it that nervous flyers are using it all the time in a very positive way. So I don't know if you knew that, but a lot of people who are scared of flying will track that flight before they are going to take it, and because what they're doing is they're checking that they all land, which is quite nice.
They do. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who, whether they're nervous about flying specifically or are nervous travelers in general, I think that travel of any kind often brings out the nerves in people, whether are things going to be on time? Am I going to get there? Do I have enough time? Is it going to be okay? Do I need to, rearrange my schedule? And because there's that, and I'm sure listeners to your podcast have talked about this, there's that lack of control. Like, the aircraft is not under your control. And so we get people from time to time will write into our support team, or they'll message us on social media, and they say, oh, you guys, saved me. I was rushing. And I found out that the aircraft that I was going to be on was really 2 hours late. So I didn't have to rush to the airport. Or, I could, I knew I was going to make my flight. I didn't have to worry about that. And that's the best when people come to us and say, oh, I was using the app, and not only do I like it, but it helped me somehow. And that's what I always love to hear, whether it's, making people feel more at ease when they're traveling, or, a specific example where, I know I don't have to rush, or I know I've got the time, I'm excited about this particular aircraft that I'm going to be on that I knew about ahead of time.
Well, it's also sort of phenomenally reassuring to see how many aircraft are in the air at any one time. So we always quote sort of a random figure, but what's the actual sort of figure, would you say? Or, I mean, obviously it changes morning, night, evening, different parts of the world, but
so
generally...
So peak time for aviation is about between 14 and 16 UTC. So the middle of the afternoon in Europe, when Europe is still awake, the US is woken up, and that can go during the summer. That can be north of 20,000 flights in the air at the same time.
20,000 flights.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And that would be what? How many people do you think that would be roughly?
Because there's so many, seating differentials and cargo aircraft and everything like that, we usually use 100 per aircraft. 100 people per aircraft, because a 777 is going to have close to 350. A Cessna is going to have one or two. So we kind of average it out about 100 people per aircraft, and count a few million people in the sky.
That's amazing, isn't it? When you think about that, all being controlled, all landing.
Yeah, takeoffs,
Remarkable.
landings, en route guidance, everything going, going where it's supposed to go, and getting there safely.
So how do you actually do it? I mean, so tell it, like, for a real noddy like me, how do you, because it's accurate. I just always wonder how you do it, how you have access to it, how that's safe, all that sort of stuff.
Sure. So the radio signals that come out of the aircraft that tell us where the aircraft is are broadcast as part of a safety regimen that the aircraft themselves are partaking in. The transponder data that the aircraft are sending out, we use it to track the aircraft, but the aircraft are using it to track themselves as well, because it's part of their traffic collision avoidance systems. So the aircraft are saying, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And if another aircraft gets too close and says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, those transponders will deconflict. And the pilots will be told, okay, you need to climb, you need to descend, you need to turn, you need to do something to prevent a collision. But as part of that, we get a lot of information about where the aircraft is, its position, its altitude, speed, heading, all sorts of stuff. And so we take that information from about 35,000 receivers on the ground all around the world, plus satellite-based receivers up in space. And we fuse that information with all of the airline schedules. So the aircraft don't tell us where they're coming from or where they're going to. They just tell us where they are. So we have to take the information that says, I'm this aircraft, and this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, and combine that information with schedule information about when were they supposed to leave, when are they supposed to arrive, what's the route of this aircraft at the moment based on what the call sign is, and we put all that together to give people kind of a holistic picture of what's happening in the skies above them.
That's very clever, because you're doing all of that in real time, aren't you? So that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's so we track aircraft in a few different ways. The most advanced way is what we call ADS-B, and that's basically the aircraft telling us exactly where it is, exactly what it's doing, and that's from the time we get the signal to the time you see it on the screen. It's a few seconds of processing time and signal reception and things like that.
That's amazing. So you've been going since 2006, sort of, but then it happened by accident, and then it became a big thing. And I guess there must be loads of you there working on this.
So we got started in about 2007. 2009 is when things really changed for us, because we opened up the receiver network so that if you had an ADS-B receiver, or if you wanted to build one, you could share the data with us. And that's what helped to grow the network is receiver hosts, people that are either hosting our receiver kit that we've designed and have manufactured, or you can build your own at home. And then so anyone hosting a receiver gets a free business subscription from us. So that not only do they have the raw data with their receivers, but they also get back all sorts of things like 3 years of history for aircraft around the world, different weather layers and things like that we overlay on top of all the information. So you can not only see where aircraft are, but kind of see why they're there. Why is this plane flying from New York to LA, flying over Toronto? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, I see a massive thunderstorm in the middle of the United States. Okay, now that makes sense. So it's, kind of helping people understand why aircraft are doing what they're doing as well, I think is a big part of what we're doing.
Which is interesting for me. I mean, I love the sound of that. But when I look at your as a sort of a business and thinking, so what keeps them doing this? So it started off as a sort of like a helpful thing, and now it's like exploded. Well, excuse probably the wrong phrase, but it's expanded. What keeps you going? Why do you do it? So I keep thinking, is it like lots of people giving their time voluntarily, or is it I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
I
to?
mean, yeah. So the reason I do it is because I'm obsessed with aviation, and there are, I would say, no shortage of people on our staff who are very, very similar. We do have some folks who work for the company who don't know an A320 from a 747, and could care less. They're in it for the all of the technology behind it, and things like that. So some of those people do exist in the company, and it's fun to see
Do you
them.
just ignore them, or do just...
Not at all, not at all. We try and bring them into the fold. And so now they start asking questions about, well, what's that about, and things like that. So it becomes fun to watch them kind of explore aviation. But I think we do what we do because we enjoy the aviation industry so much, and we keep trying to make FlightRadar24 better because we want it to be better for us.
Yes.
It also happens to be good business to make it better for our users. But we spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time in the app. I spend a lot of time on the website. There are no shortage of people who are poking, prodding, trying to break things so that we can move forward with development, things like that, where it's, oh, I want to do this because I think that would be cool. And then we put it together and it becomes a feature that, goes into the apps and goes onto the site.
So you've got the website. So I've seen that. You've got the app. You also do a podcast.
We do, yeah. I
which is number one, which is a bit annoying. It's always number one.
Sorry.
We've been close a few times in the same genre. I always look at Aviation UK, and then we seem to be end up quite close. But you're always number one. It's obviously very popular. What do you think it is that makes it so popular for people?
I think, well, I always answer that question by saying people always want to know what's happening around them. And I think that it's a chance to follow along with something that I think more and more people are becoming aware of, that what's happening in the skies above them. Over the past couple of weeks, that's been acutely made acutely aware of that, to all of the balloon nonsense.
Yes.
But I think that people really like to know what's going on. It's I don't think it's much different than reading the news. It's just a very specific kind of news. And people discovering that, oh, they like seeing what's happening in the skies above them, and they like knowing what's happening and learning more about that. I think because aviation's such a jargon filled, acronym filled, insular industry, though it touches every part of the globe, it's a very small, kind of compact, closed industry. And so I think it seems very mystifying to a lot of people. And we do our best to unpack that and kind of explain what's happening, why things are happening, and what's important, not only for people who are really interested in minutia, but people that are just flying in general and want to know more about what aircraft are doing when they're on board.
It certainly gets a lot of mentions in the Lovefly group, and people find it, and sometimes people get a bit hooked on it. So sometimes I have to sort of say, maybe you can wean yourself off, because it can become like a safety. We call it safety behaviors when you're trying to beat a fear of flying. They say it's fine to. Why don't you check your route for the week before you fly, and then you'll see that it takes off, it lands, it takes off, it lands. You can see what's going on, and then you can visualize being on there. The trouble is that sometimes people get then hooked on it, and they have to check their flight, and they have to do that for a month before, and then it doesn't. I mean, it's probably good for you, but it's not good for them for the nervous flyer thing. So there's got to be some sort of happy medium, want them to
right.
You know what I mean? So you want them to get to the stage where they just check it because they're interested or curious, or they want to know if the flight's late, which is like most, hopefully most people would like to get to that place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I think I think it's good to have that there and available, but it's it's certainly something where you don't want to be relying just on just on having to do that.
No, no. So I always wonder when I look at what you've done, because it's evolved so much. I always think, what they do next? You know, what do people want you to be doing next?
Sure. I think the answer to that question is more
That's an easy one.
yeah,
Thanks very much. Yeah.
more data, more visualization,
Mm,
more of giving the users more access to more data.
yeah.
And so some of the things we're working on right now are different ways to filter flights. The release that's going to come out, we're talking mid-February, so it'll be out hopefully soon, definitely by spring, where we're going to have the ability to kind of filter flights by type and category. So you'll be able to look at passenger flights versus cargo flights versus private
Oh,
jets,
nice.
things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then different ways to filter specific flights. So, either aircraft or airports. Do you want to see, flights that are just flying to Germany, for instance,
Mm.
or flights just from Germany, that kind of thing. And then from there, it's adding ways for users to see the data that they want to see. So we've got kind of custom alerts now where you can set an alert for a particular flight number or call sign or an aircraft registration. But let's expand that. Let's, based on, we only want that for, you're going to be flying on a specific day. So you want to know when the inbound aircraft takes off. But you don't care about that flight tomorrow because you're not on the flight tomorrow, you're on the flight today. So let's, set things by date. Let's
Oh, wow.
set some
Yeah.
more conditions and give
Yeah.
people a more granular way to see, kind of the flight data that they're interested in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that would be very attractive. So that is like a nice little tweak. I can imagine there's a lot of work behind that, but that's really getting quite granular, isn't it? So that you're able to sort of be very specific. I want to know this on this day from this country, this aircraft type. Yeah, very cool. So what about so I'm going to ask you a sort of question that's been in my mind when I've managed to get through. I mean, you've
Sure.
been super quick, so you literally got back to me straight away. And so I've written to other places like, aircraft makers, they remain anonymous, who've basically said this isn't really what we want to talk about, and I think actually
Sure.
should be, but you would go straight back. So I'm really grateful. But one of the things I've often wondered is, like, in the exceptionally rare occurrence of something happening, are you consulted? Is it sort of, are you part of that chain of events or inquiry?
Yeah. So we have very strong relationships with a number of air accident investigation branches or investigative boards, because the ADSB data it's the first draft of history. So it's
Yes.
instantaneous, it's sent out from the aircraft. And that often gives investigators not enough information to determine what happened or why. That takes a full investigation. And the important part there is getting the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder recovered from the aircraft if something has happened. But having the data available, especially if there's a question of where the aircraft is actually located, having that data available to be able to send is often very helpful. Or if there's a question of historical data that can inform the investigation, where we have a record of every flight that aircraft has taken, over the past 10 years. And the investigators are looking to say, okay, is there anything that the incident flight can tell us about what the aircraft is doing, and let's compare that to the past week, the past month, the past year for that particular aircraft. Was there anything that stands out? And we can kind of fuse that data together to say, here's a more holistic picture of what this aircraft was doing, what this flight was doing. And so we found it very helpful to package as much data as we can and provide that to investigators. They might not have need for it. The incident might be clear cut. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder are easily recovered. But then on the other hand, there are incidents where the ADSB data that we're collecting can help inform the investigation. Or in the case that happened this week, begin an investigation. There was an incident in Hawaii last December where a United flight lost height after after departure. It nosed down and stopped its climb and actually descended. And the aircraft recovered, but the pilots reported the incident to the airline leadership and the FAA, but the NTSB wasn't notified because there was no damage to the aircraft and there were no injuries to anyone on board.
Yes.
So it didn't meet the reporting criteria. But once the news broke, based on reporting by an aviation journalist, based on an analysis of ADS-B data that we provided, the NTSB said, you know what, no, we're going to take a look at this. And
Oh,
that,
wow.
began the investigation. So those types of things where there might not be an accident, there might not be an incident where anyone's been injured or an
Yes.
aircraft has been damaged, but it's something that safety regulators want to take a look at to see if they can try to prevent an occurrence, the next time.
That's very cool, isn't it? And that's like an extra layer of reassurance for people, thinking that nothing really happened. I mean, it's not saying nothing really happened, but it's like something unusual happened. It was a irregular,
right.
but it not enough to trigger all these other agencies, but enough for you to think, well, there might be something here that we could learn from anyway. And I think that's brilliant.
And
that's another
that's
layer.
the goal. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's always the goal. I mean, in an accident or incident investigation, the goal is always to prevent whatever happened that was bad from ever happening again. And countless stories of investigations finding root causes and saying, okay, we can fix that and prevent that from ever happening again.
Yeah, we always say with commercial aviation, there's no single point of failure, and the other thing is that something happens, we always learn from it, and that's like
right.
And that's what you're reinforcing now, which I really like. So, what's the backup to the transponder? If they don't have that, and you're not able to follow that, are there other ways that you can track aircraft, or do you not need to for your tech?
So for our system, the aircraft has to have a transponder. We don't have access to primary radar, so we don't have the ability to track anything that doesn't have a transponder. But for 99.9% of the time, at least as far as the aircraft we're concerned with,
yes,
that they have transponders and we're able to track them.
Yeah, so that's really very, very accurate then. So if I may ask then, if have you ever been on duty or been employed working with them when something has happened? And then, because I always think about like air traffic control, if there is an incident, because it is so rare, but there's a chain of people that be affected by that. And I wonder if that's ever sort of happened for anybody at FlightRadar24 as well, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when something happens, we want to pull the data as quickly as possible. So as soon as we find out about something happening, we make sure that all of the data that could possibly be relevant is saved. And so the way the site works is that we display about a fifth of the data that we receive from the aircraft, because the ADS-B signal is sent twice per second.
Wow.
And if we displayed all of that data on the site, it would be impossible to run. It would just fall over under the weight of all the data. But all of the raw data is saved within the receivers, and then it's kind of collated and saved by us, not on the website, but saved. And so when we find out that there's been an incident, we'll pull that raw data if it's still available, or we'll pull the collated granular data that gives us much more precise timing into whatever happened. And then we'll analyze that to see if there's any information that might be helpful to any investigation, and we'll send that over to whoever's investigating the incident. And then we'll usually make it public, either via our blog or social media, so that the media can report accurately on what happened. Because one of the biggest things, as far as we're concerned, is that if there's going to be reporting on an incident, we want it to be accurate. The popular media has a history of sensationalizing aircraft accidents.
Yes.
And so our goal is to say, this is what happened. This was the data that we have. Here's the aircraft information so that you can be accurate in your, discussion about that. No, this was not a passenger aircraft. This was a cargo aircraft. So, lives weren't at risk in the magnitude of hundreds. It was 2 pilots. Or, in the past few years, no, the 737 is not a MAX. It's an NG. They're completely different aircraft, and so things that go into the MAX issues don't factor in here. It's a separate discussion and things like that. So making sure that the conversation about what has happened is as accurate and precise as possible is a big driver for us in understanding what happened and helping everyone else understand that as well.
Yeah, that's you. It's quite a responsibility you carry, actually, isn't it? And it sounds like you take it very seriously in terms of
absolutely. Yeah, we do take it very seriously because we want to have the trust of our audience. I mean, we're taking live air traffic and making a map for people around the world, and we want to ensure that the data is as accurate as possible for everybody. So
yes.
For us, for our users, and for whoever else may need to access that data.
So that's great, brilliant, and we appreciate that. So what's the best bit about doing what you do?
Me personally, the best bit is well, things like this. I really enjoy talking to people about what we do. And for me, the absolute best thing about my job is getting to go to events where there are other aviation folks and just being amongst,
it's like a proper geek out,
geeks.
isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, we travel to these events and ostensibly I'm working, but really it's just I'm talking about airplanes with a bunch of people who also love talking about airplanes, and for me that's the best part of the job.
Yeah. So you've never had a fear of flying then, I'm guessing?
No, I've never had a fear of flying, though I will say that as I've gotten older, it's not a fear, but I'm much more aware. And I don't know if that's because I'm in the industry or if I'm just kind of getting older and I have a family now and things like that, where I'm just much more aware of things that are great, that are wonderful. I'm very thankful that I can, cruise through the sky in a carbon fiber tube at 8/10 the speed of sound, but also that's kind of an interesting thing to be doing for a land mammal.
Yeah.
Well, it's two sides of the same coin, I think.
Yeah, it does blow you. I think it's widely reported that you do sort of become more aware of your situation, as you put it. With mortality, if you like. As soon as you have families and stuff like that, people depend upon you. It does make you question those things that previously you might have taken for granted. So you've never had a fear of flying, then, but you're more aware. What about any of your colleagues? Are any of them like, I love doing the job, but sod that, we'll get on an aircraft?
Yeah, we have a few people that work for FlightRadar24 that I don't know if I don't know how deep it is, but they are apprehensive, and when they do fly, they will reach out to other people to ask about something, or about this aircraft, or is this airline okay, and things like that. And so we kind of helpfully we have a lot of information that we can share with people who are interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate to be in the industry for a while now, but I work with people who can literally, without looking, they can hear an aircraft go overhead and they can pretty much tell you what it was. And I think, well, how can you do that? Because it must be because the engines, you could put on a different aircraft type, but they pretty much can nail it. I think that's quite phenomenal, isn't it? Or scary. I don't know which it is.
I can't do it for every aircraft, but I live underneath the approach path in Chicago, and so I know when certain aircraft are coming over, I can definitely tell which ones they are. But I don't think I could tell a pair of 737s apart.
No. I was very fortunate when I worked years ago. I worked at the airport when the Concorde always used to take off at a certain time.
That one you can
stop working, and that was Concorde, because everything stopped and the noise was just phenomenal. So, thank you for giving me your time. I'm going to ask one last question, if I may.
Sure.
And afterwards, I'll be kicking myself, thinking I should have asked this, should have asked that. And anyone listening to the podcast will think, why didn't he ask this? But I've just, anyway. I guess my question would be, knowing that a lot of nervous flyers listen to follow the app and use the website and stuff, and use your, what advice would you give to the nervous flyer based on your experience of doing what you do at FlightRadar24?
Two pieces of advice, and one will probably not be very helpful at all, because it's all facts and figures. But I mean, looking at statistics, it is the safest form of transportation. Flying is absolutely the safest form of transportation. Writ large, the entire industry is built around safety, because there's no margin for safety. You're flying in the sky. You can't pull over to the side of the road. You can't just kind of continue to float on the ocean and figure it out. You're in the sky. And so the entire industry is built around being as safe as possible, getting safety right over and over and over and over again. Millions of hours in the air each year for aircraft, maintenance, repair, making sure everything is exactly where it needs to be, when it needs to be there, so that the industry is safe. That's probably not very helpful.
I think it's really helpful.
Well, and hopefully it is for some people, but often when I talk to nervous flyers or people who have a fear of flying, they're like, yeah, numbers, that's not helpful. What I will say, though, is on the other side of that, and we talked about this, a little while ago, with the industry being very small. It's such a big industry, but anyone who works in the industry is just a big family. And so people who have a fear of flying or are nervous about that, talk to a flight attendant, or ask if you can talk to the pilots. They will, I guarantee you, 99.99% of the time, they will be happy to talk to you. They will be happy to say, what are you nervous about? Is there something specific you're nervous about? Yeah. Is it the takeoff? Is it the landing? Is it the weather? Is it turbulence? Let's talk about it. And I guarantee you, they've heard it all before. They have absolutely heard it all before. And they're up there day in and day out. And so talk to your flight crew and tell them that you're feeling nervous about something, because I guarantee you, they have ways that help them get through the day. They've been in far worse turbulence than you'll ever experience. They've seen things that they will never tell you about, because you are already a nervous flyer. And so talk to your flight crew and say, I'm a little nervous about something specific, or I'm generally a nervous flyer. And what do you recommend? How can I, get through this flight? So that's have the stats in the back of your brain.
Yeah.
But then talk to people, because people are always the answer.
I'm surprised. I mean, your third one wasn't. Look how many flights take off and land on our app. But don't do it for more than a week before you fly, because the facts speak for themselves, don't they? So you see so many in the air. And I love that figure earlier on that you said. So just remind us again, that at the busiest point of the day, you said between 2 and 4 in the afternoon European time, was it?
There's about a max. Yeah, in the middle of the afternoon in Europe, there's about 20,000 flights in the air at the busiest time of the year, and so there's it's a good sized city in the sky at any one time.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ian. That was absolutely brilliant. And I'm really grateful for your time, and keep doing what you're doing. And we look forward to hearing about all your enhancements and stuff, etc. But yeah, just so you know, lots of people love what you do. So keep it up.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a joy to speak with you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Lovefly podcast. And if you want to find out about more that we do, please go to our website, lovefly.co.uk, and you'll see a list of other options available to you should you need them. Thanks for listening.